welcome. Glad to have you here this Tuesday afternoon. As always, well, if you can't hear me, your audio is not on, but as always, ask your questions in the comment section and let us know if we can clarify anything that we're running through. We'd also love to get any questions you have for future office hours. This office hour was inspired by a couple of our publishers who had some questions around statistics and analytics, and you've got so much data available to you. What's the stuff that you need to know that you should be using for tracking and internal purposes? What are the things that you want to be using for sales purposes, and what doesn't really matter very much to your business? So we're going to run through what Ryan pulled together for you here today. Just as a starting point, for those of you who have a print product, the statistics that you have are things like the number of copies, number of pages in a copy, things like where are they distributed, either zip code or its postal routes. On the web, we have a much wider collection of data. It's really about understanding how people are interacting with you. What are they looking at? What are they engaging with? And who are they? Where are they? What's some of their demographic background? So you can see on your screen the definition from Wikipedia, but it's really about understanding better how people are interacting with your content and who they are in some capacity. So we'll start with Google Analytics, and Google has this great tool that they've pulled together, and it's free to use. At least most people use the free version. Not even sure what's included in the pay version. And it gives you insights into your traffic to your website. Now, it's important to note a couple of things. First is there's a lot of stats out there and providers, although fewer today than there were 10 years ago, and they're all going to show information differently. Google Analytics itself is a conservative statistic, meaning of all the bots and all the automated things that hit your site, like Google and Bing and spammy bots and all of these things, those are omitted. Google can recognize who they are, and they omit them from the record. So more than any other, these are real live human beings. So as we look at this, the key stats that you see here, we're going to start with sessions. Sessions are the number of times people come to your website. For print publishers, a way to think of it is it's the number of times someone picks up your publication, physically lifts up the document and starts to go through it. Now, users, on the other hand, are the number of people who pick it up. So if I pick up your publication 4 times, that means I'm one person, one user, and I created 4 separate sessions. So it's a very human way of understanding this. Likewise, if I go to your website 3 times this month, you've got one user who had 3 separate sessions. And so there's a very clear distinction there. Now, page views is the number of pages that I looked at, or that people in aggregate have looked at on your site. Again, going back to the print publication, if I flip through 3 pages, I've looked at that many pages. If I click on 3 different links, I hit your home page, and I click on an article, and then I follow a link out to an event, and then I wander off on the internet, I went to 3 pages, home page, article, event. So we have one user during one session viewed 3 page views. And you can see how they sort of build on each other. Now, page views per session is what you might think, how many pages I look at for every time I came to your site. Obviously, the higher the number, the better. It signals a few different things. One, it signals that people are engaged with your content. But 2, it also signals that you've given them ways to continue their conversation. Now, it's an interesting anecdote that as Facebook has risen in terms of the amount of traffic it drives, the number of page views per session has dropped precipitously. The reason for it is you're on Facebook, someone shares something, you click it, you read it, go, that's cool, I'm going back to Facebook. And so not many people break out of that experience and wander around your site. Now, I will say, related to that, though, a lot of publishers that are on this call or listening after the fact don't do a great job of providing your readers with more to experience when they're engaged with your content. It's sort of like a dead end in a maze. I get to where I want to be, and there's nowhere else for me to go, so I'm going to go back. if you give people nice ways to explore, and the system automatically generates things like related content, but if you can link out to things that you really think are going to be interesting, other breaking news, other things that are tied together, it will help people see more content, increase their page views and page views per session, and hopefully make your content more shareable across the board. Session duration is more a measure of time. This is a tricky one because I want you to think about when someone hits your page, Google starts the clock, and it's ticking like a stopwatch or a timer. And when they go to the next page, they have another data point. And Google uses something called JavaScript and some other mechanisms to ping the person's browser. But if the person hits a site and bails, or they have certain cookies disabled or JavaScript disabled, or if they wander off and they leave their browser open, some of these statistics may not be entirely accurate, but it's a loose identifier of how much they're engaged with your given piece of content.
Yeah, I mean, this one I'm going to chime in here and say this is very similar to pages per session in terms of Facebook and how that's affected some of the metrics that used to be more common. As we go through this, we're not really going to talk about pages per session, average session duration, and even bounce rate, which we're going to cover next. Facebook has really changed the game and what those really mean. What I mean by that is if you're looking at average session duration and you have a really quick article, hey, you're posting something about, hey, this business closed. It might be only one paragraph. All right. A person can probably come and read that entire paragraph in less than a minute and then be back to Facebook. So does that mean that, your average session duration is bad? No. It just meant the content was quickly consumable. Now, where this can be valuable is if you're looking at an individual piece of content and you've written this very long, verbose article, and clearly it's going to take someone 5 to 10 minutes to read through the whole thing, and they're only on it for 30 seconds. Then you can actually glean some good information from that. One, it could be that your audience just doesn't like the longer content. That's a possibility. Although we've seen time and time again that people will read it if it's interesting to them. So maybe it's just that you have the wrong topic for your audience. The other thing that it could mean is that your title and excerpt were just poorly worded. So what I mean by that, and we covered this a little bit last week in office hours, I think it was last week anyway, when someone searches Google and they find something and they read the title and the excerpt in Google, they click on that and then come to an article that has nothing to do with that title or excerpt, they're going to leave really quickly. That's going to bring your session duration down. So it's not a totally worthless metric. There are things to glean from it when you get down into the nitty-gritty. But in terms of, painting the overall picture, say if you're having a sales conversation, those aren't going to be helpful metrics for you. Those are more maybe for your editorial team to see what's working and what's not.
That's a great point. And these metrics do have dual purposes, right? Some are for selling, some are for becoming better internally. And to Ryan's point about SEO, and we talked about last week things like basic formatting of articles and how long is a good paragraph, short is better as a preview, and all of these things, that will affect your readership, engagement, all of that. And so you can really play with things if you want to drill down. So this is the screenshot you see here is a screenshot of the site. But what Google Analytics allows you to do, although I don't think we will today, is drill down to individual pieces of content so you can see, this was this article I labored over, 4 people read it, and the average person was on the page for 10 seconds. There's a problem there. So you can drill down a bit further. Bounce rate is the number of people who read one page and leave before seeing something else. And as you can see, it can be misleading, in part because of the things we talked about with Facebook. So as you look at your bounce rate, you can actually see it across different sources of content, sources of traffic rather. Did they come from Facebook? Did they come from email? Are they organic, meaning they came from Google directly? Or did they just go straight to your site? And we've seen historically there's very different bounce rates from people who come from different places because they have different goals in mind. So lower bounce rate is generally better, as is higher pages per session, but if you have a piece of content that goes viral, it's going to hammer your pages per session and your bounce rate. But you're thrilled because you just attracted thousands of new people who probably wouldn't have otherwise seen you. So it's a worthy trade-off. And new sessions, this is literally the number of new people because Google drops a cookie which identifies you, not who you are, but that you're a unique individual, and then they track that over time. It's not entirely accurate because if you clear your cookies or you have cookie blockers, this stat won't be useful. So, take it with a grain of salt. We hear people use the word hits a lot. As you can see, literally it's a 4-letter word. It's also figuratively one. Don't use it. A hit is a old stat which sounds really cool, and it's a big number because it's a server hit. A server hit is every time the browser asks the server for some information. So one page can have dozens or hundreds of hits. For instance, an average Locable homepage has over 100 because of all the images that are in the header, in the body, in the calendar. Every ad is a hit. It might actually be 2 in some cases. Every piece of JavaScript and CSS. So hits are a horrible indication of traffic. If you ever hear anyone say that they've got, hundreds of thousands of hits, one, it's a completely bogus number, and 2, so what? So don't use hits. Don't use hits. Don't use hits. If somebody uses the word hits, correct them and ask, do you mean page views? Or maybe you mean users. Clarify, because that's what matters. So we're going to transition. We're going to talk about banner ads for a bit. I'm going to let Ryan run through this and talk about some of these things. You're going to see with BroadStreet, our ad server, they provide you with some unique stats you don't get anywhere else, and then some that you get everywhere else.
Thanks, Brian. So, when you're talking about banner ads, typically you hear people talk about, number of impressions, number of views. Those are used interchangeably. It's how many times an ad was displayed on your site or on a page or in your email or wherever it may be. If you want to click on to the next one, hovers, and you see that the screenshot to the right is from BroadStreet, which is the ad server that comes packaged with our membership and our technology. However, even with if we back up to looking at on-site analytics like Google Analytics, even if you don't use Google Analytics and use another tool, the terms are usually about the same, maybe just a little bit, different naming convention, but usually end up with the same types of metrics. Same thing here with banner ads. If you use Google DFP or any other number of, ad serving technologies, they usually use some sort of impressions, clicks, and click-through rates. Now with BroadStreet, they add another one called hovers. And this isn't as common, although I have seen variations of this in other servers, but it is a measure of engagement with an ad that isn't a click. This is particularly important with BroadStreet because they offer you a whole bunch of different, new media type of ads. Say movie times is a great one that they offer a standard ad slot for. People likely aren't going to click on that. They just want to know when the movie is, or maybe it's a hover effect of some sort where it pops down a larger image to see more of the ad. Those kind of things might not be asking for a click by the way they're designed, but it's still an important measure of engagement and whether people saw it and interacted with it or not.
And I'll add 2 thoughts here. I want you to think about hovers in this way. Have you ever noticed that when you're driving a car, that whichever direction your head looks for any duration of time, you start to veer in that direction? So if it's a really narrow road or there's a lot of traffic, you don't really want to stare off to the side because you're probably going to sideswipe someone. The same general principle is why hovers are interesting. Wherever I'm looking, I'm often moving my mouse around. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to this rule. One is mobile. There's no mouse on mobile. So hovers aren't a great indication of mobile engagement. Number 2, because of the way the push down is situated on the page, and it's a highly engaged ad slot, the hover itself is going to show probably disproportionately high simply because a cursor may appear at the top of the page, say they typed in the URL, and then they're scrolling down, the cursor by nature will hover over that for a brief period of time. I'm not sure what the threshold is with BroadStreet in terms of triggering the hover statistic, but if you see some push downs having a shockingly high hover rate, it's likely because of that. However, again, it's a nice proxy for engagement that highlights especially sidebar and certain types of ads.
Yeah, so the next thing here that we care about are clicks. That's the number of times an ad was actually clicked. That one should be fairly straightforward. And if we go on to the last one, we talk about click-through rate. We're going to spend a couple slides on click-through rate because it's important to understand what it actually means. But the definition is the number of times an ad is clicked compared to the number of times it's shown. So in other words, it's clicks over views, or said another way, it's clicks over impressions. Clicks divided by impressions, right? It's a percentage of how many times an ad gets clicked. If we jump on to the next slide now, we're going to talk about what that actually means. It's measured as a percentage. So 1% is click 0.01. A lot of times when we have conversations with publishers or even other advertisers, this gets confused very easily, and rightfully so. You're getting down into math that you probably haven't done in a really long time if you're anything like me. So if you see a 0.1% click-through rate, that is equivalent to 0.001, which is 1/10 of 1%. Now, if you're like me, when you hear that, it's like, well, that's a shockingly low number. But if you look at the industry averages for banner ads, the average click-through rate is 0.1%. That's 1/10 of 1% that's how many times an ad is going to get clicked. But when you think about it, let's say you have 10,000 page views on your site, and you had 9 ad slots on every page. That means you have 90,000 possible impressions to deliver. And even at 1/10 of 1%, that's still a meaningful number for advertisers. So take it with a grain of salt, I guess, is my point here. The standard 468 by 60 banner ad is probably the one of the worst converting ads on the site that we have, and that's going to be 0.04%, so even less than that. So when you see these small, what seemingly small click-through rates, don't panic. It's normal. It's the industry average. If you're doing anything over the 0.1%, you're doing fantastic. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk about what can actually affect that in a few slides from now.
And a couple of things that I want to highlight here. So a 0.1% click-through rate is 1 click on every 1,000 impressions. Okay, so now to show 1,000 times, you get 1 click. Now, these are industry average, like internet-wide. So there's a wide variation from site and advertiser and quality of the ad. It's all over the map. But this is average over billions and billions of impressions. So it's at least a somewhat reliable number. Now, in addition to the size of the ad is where the ad appears. We do use the standard banner, although you're able to make it larger, and it's within the flow. But the other thing I want to mention here is the impressions on digital and display ads with banner ads are analogous to a display ad in print. Not everyone sees it because they're not always looking at everything on the page. An impression is it's on the page, and a person turned to that page or clicked to that page. Does it mean the person literally looked at it or read it? No. But it's there. It has the possibility of being identified. And that's part of the reason why click-through rates are lower. We'll talk about some other reasons why they're lower than you might think in a few minutes. So continuing on that, on the right you see sort of the layout of the average Locable site. And above the fold is right around the inline ad at the top, depending on how big your logo and header section is. And we've done the layout here using input from things like Google's heat map research and eye tracking technology to see where people tend to look. The push-down ad is the most effective because it's literally within the flow of the content. It's large. It's right under the navigation. So it just has the best visibility. It also has a nice attribute that it can expand. Again, you can use some of Broad Street stuff to do some simple little ads that expand on hover, but it's also not too intrusive. And so we try to balance this effective ad slots, effective placements without being too intrusive, without your site looking like there's too many ads. And so as you scroll down the page in sort of normal view, not in this shrunk down preview, you'll generally only see a couple ads at a time at most, depending on your screen size. So, different ads will perform better. There's different real estate, which means you can do different things. For instance, on the sidebar ad, that tends to be a very high-performing ad, even without being as prominent as some others. You'll see on many sites, especially larger sites, that there may be a video ad appearing there. Now, your advertisers probably can't afford to create the video, but the point is it's a flexible medium that you can do some interesting things with. I'll also note it's interesting because it's akin to many print ads in terms of size. I will also warn, do not take a print ad and drop it in as a web ad. Font size, font sharpness, display issues will make it highly ineffective. So these are some considerations about placement, and we've done a lot of the work for you, but no, the general value of a site is higher value on top, lower value on bottom, higher value to the left, lower value on the right. Obviously, there's some variation, but since we read top to bottom, left to right, that's more or less true in average. We talk a lot about pricing using share of voice. We've limited by default the number of ads, in part to not have ad overrun. People tend to get tunnel vision or bumper blindness or any other phrase that you want to use. I'm sure we've all been to sites that have ads all over the place, and you strategically focus your attention to avoid being bombarded by these. And so we try to avoid that. Share of voice is the way to say, look, in the push down, you have 3 or 4 advertisers in rotation. Page loads once, page view, 1 ad impression. Page view 2, ad impression number 2 for that slot. This is better than just loading up on ads because, again, people will get that bumper blindness. They won't see it. The effectiveness will go way down. It's better to have people see your ad 25% of the time than ignore it 100% of the time. So banner ads, given the fact that they are not incredibly effective as a percentage of impressions, why are they still important? Well, they're a real standard mechanism. We're used to seeing ads throughout our daily life, whether it's an ad in a print publication, on television, as we're driving on the road. It's something that our brains handle well. And there's not only click-through value, as in that sort of engagement, but there's branding value. And so to say that the only value is in clicks would be a big mistake. That being said, there's differences between a good ad and a bad ad. A good ad has a clear message, is highly readable, and has a clear call to action. So you can use it for a number of things, but you really want to use it tied to some level of call to action that says, hey, do this, take action, and reinforces the brand value along the way. So if you can tie in things like a sense of urgency and scarcity, the deal ends Friday, people are more likely to take action. This is true just in general, not just with banner ads, but you don't want to forget it with banner ads. If you can tie in with smiling faces or places, that's going to be helpful, and that drives that emotional response, which, 1, captures our attention, and 2, drives engagement. And then you want to make sure, and this is important for you, because if you sell an advertiser a package and their stuff sucks, it's going to perform terribly. And then they say, oh, your website's not good or your audience is not good. No. If your product is bad, people aren't interested. It doesn't matter where it shows up or how many people see it. And so you, need, as a publisher, need to have a discretionary policy where you say, look, we won't accept your bad ads, and be willing to confront people, but also make suggestions. Part of it is in the quality of the ad, and this last bit here about a landing page is important. If I link my ad to my homepage, which is completely generic about my business, what action do I want someone to take? If I have an ad that talks about my $49 spring special, and you go to my homepage, and you don't see anything about it, or even if you do, but it's buried, people are not going to convert into customers. It will be ineffective. So you want to have a landing page, or rather your advertiser should have some page that talks about the thing that the ad was about to help advance them towards a purchase, and you want to help them do that.
Yeah, so to add to that, I included this last bullet point here in particular because we were just talking about click-through rate. Right, and a lot of advertisers get fixated on impressions and click-through rate, rightfully so. I mean, they want to know, how many times their ad is being seen and how many clicks they're going to get. But at the end of the day, what they really care about, whether they say it or not, is whether people are going to spend money with them. Right? They're trying to grow their business. They're trying to generate more revenue, and those types of activities. And without having a strong call to action, without creating some urgency or scarcity, talking about positive emotion, or having the dedicated landing page that will actually convert them into a customer on the other end. Now, just a quick side before I finish that thought, is a landing page doesn't necessarily have to be like, hey, buy online, right? It could be contact me for a free consultation, right? It can be simple things just to get the conversation going and, taking the next logical step.
Print the coupon, right? Print the coupon and bring it in. It doesn't have to be buy online for sure.
Right. So in any case, having those things, you can use that as part of your conversation with people to kind of steer them away from, here's our click-through rate, here's the industry average. You can see that we're, about in line, but it's about much more than that. We're going to help you get the customers you need, and you can then start to educate them about what makes a good banner ad. How do you convert them once they click on the ad? Like Brian said before, it doesn't matter how many times they click on it, if 0% of the people want whatever's there after they click. So keep those things in mind. No one metric, any metric we've talked about today, whether it's banner ads or on-site or stuff we're going to talk about, no one metric should be used to measure overall performance. It's how it all works together.
Indeed. So we're going to switch and talk about Facebook. And Erica asked about demographics as in explicit demographics. Well, it turns out we can get more specifics about your followers on Facebook, because when you're on Facebook, what do you have? Yeah, I'm Brian. I'm a 30-something. I have kids. I post stuff about kids. Facebook is tracking everything you do. So they have a lot of personally identifiable information about you. That being said, there's all sorts of legislation going on about personally identifiable information and privacy. And so the amount of information available not only varies, but is subject to change quite rapidly. Google did just introduce some demographic data that we can get access to beyond location, but it's very hit and miss, completely based on the individual's browser history. And oh, by the way, I don't know about you, but do you and your spouse share a computer? So how does that work? It's kind of hard to get past that. What about your kid or kids? And all of a sudden now you've got a family on one computer, and how useful is that? So the amount of data that you get about the individuals is highly variable, although again on Facebook we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll also stress though, your content should be a great signal of who's being covered. If I write an article about a local mommy group, who do you think is going to read that article and share it and do that sort of thing? I bet you it's going to be mostly women 23 to 45. And, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand how that is. So as you talk about your content, you talk about your content strategy, and you talk about your engagement strategy, and in Erica's case and many of yours, if you have a print publication, there should be a pretty obvious correlation. Now, can we say it's, 98.6%? No, but it doesn't matter to that extent. You're local, an engaged audience around specific types of content. Your advertisers, it's who your advertisers want to reach in a very real way. Now, on Facebook, as I sort of get back on track, and we'll revisit some of the Facebook stats in a minute, you can see a number of things. So visits are the number of times people visit your page, or your tabs are reviewed, and that sort of thing. Now, on Facebook, things are different. There's a thing called a news feed. It was a revolutionary feature that Zuckerberg created, which means it's going to bring stuff to you, right? And you want to get on the news feed. And the news feed takes different forms. There's desktop, there's mobile. If you're looking at your phone, you're just scrolling through. There used to be a saying that people hated to scroll, keep everything above the fold. Well, the news feed killed that with their infinite scroll. There literally is no end. So what this also means is that the people who visit your Facebook page, very, very small percentage, 2 to 3% of impressions will take place on your Facebook page itself. So this is important. Don't labor over your Facebook cover photo or your main image or other stuff related to your page itself. It just is not that important. You're better off posting good content. The exception to this rule is when you're running a social promotion and you're literally linking people to a tab on your page, but it's because they're clicking a link that they saw first in their newsfeed anyways. So visits will generally be relatively small. Reach, on the other hand, are the number of people who saw or liked the banner ad, were presented with the data. Whether they saw it, read it, engaged with it, completely separate issue. It can be ads. It can be boosted posts. You can see here on the screenshot that some of the posts that we've put out, we boosted. The light orange under the reach column is the organic reach. That is the number of people that saw it because Facebook pushed it to them based on a number of signals. The dark orange is the number of people that saw it because we paid Facebook to shove it in front of you. Now, you'll notice we tend, although not always, we tend to only boost the high-performing posts. Because if you boost a dog, the boost will be highly ineffective. It won't reach very many people. So be smart about that. Engagement is things like, obviously people visiting your page, but if I post something on Facebook and you click on the link, that's a form of engagement. It shows interest, the signal. If you comment, that's the highest form of engagement because not only do I have to do something, but I have to think and type. Liking is good, sharing is good. In fact, another reason that you want to tag businesses or individuals in your posts is because a click on that tagged link that goes out to their page is actually a form of engagement. Facebook tracks all of this engagement, and that is what determines how many people see your stuff. If your engagement is constantly bad, your likes are low, your comments are low, you're not going to reach that many people. And there's a combination of things you can do. One is be more authentic, as in don't be a big business, be a person. Two is post more interesting stuff. And three, look at your phrasing. How are you actually phrasing your posts? And feel free to share other people's stuff because if you reshare the local newspaper's article about whatever and people totally engage with your share, that's building your reach in general. You'll notice in this case there was an article at the top there that had massive reach for a local community. There's definitely still the availability of going viral, even though Facebook's had to limit reach due to the sheer number of posts being generated. Pardon me. So as we roll through Facebook, we're going to talk about some things, organic versus paid. Organic is often called earned media. You get it because your stuff is interesting and you've earned it. It used to be that earned media was just in the form of PR and it was a newspaper or magazine or some publication picked it up. Now organic can apply to SEO, it can apply to your Facebook reach, and it can apply to other social media, although for a whole bunch of reasons we don't spend much time talking about other social media for local publishers. But paid is paid reach, as you can see on the right. We boosted this. We spent $2 to reach an additional 866 people. It's pretty effective. You can see there's a bunch of link clicks, some page likes. So here's what's cool. Your engaging content, if it's done right on Facebook, will add more likes, which increase your future organic reach if you continue to post good content. So there's that benefit. Post likes for people who just said, I like this post, as opposed to, I want to like and follow the page. Comments are a comment, hey, this is cool. Often people will tag other people in the comments. Hey, Jane, thought you might want to see this. And then the share. Now, CPM is a common measurement or pricing mechanism for banner ads. And in fact, Facebook will show a CPM in many cases. CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions. What's a good cost per 1,000? Definitely depends on your perspective and the type of publication or website. Some sites like Yahoo or AOL, their CPM will be like $1 because it's this massive general audience with no particular demographic characteristic. The more targeted geographically, the more targeted based on demographic data, the higher the CPM can be. We recommend our publishers look at having their prices for ads be in the $20 plus range for a CPM, at least for the top ads and a little bit lower on the bottom. That's a high ad, high value ad. Well, it's high price, but it's also high value because of the focus. So it really is important to know. Now, we don't actually sell based on CPM, and we recommend that you don't. You sell based on share of voice, but you can do some math to figure out if you're in the ballpark. Cost per click, on the other hand, is literally the cost, the price that someone pays for every click that's generated. This is a hot topic because Google makes tens of billions of dollars from CPC. But you're not Google. And I don't just mean in size, and I don't mean this in any disrespect in any capacity. I mean literally your business is completely 180 degrees separate from Google. Google is the place you go when you're ready to buy a pair of golf clubs or a set of golf clubs like I would like to do, I go in, I Google, the new TaylorMade driver. What do you think my intent is? To buy the TaylorMade driver. So the ads, which show up along with organic, are literally giving me the buy here. It's very expensive and it's very tied to my intent. If I go to your website and I'm in your community and I'm a father and I'm a taxpayer and I'm all the things your advertisers want, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily looking for carpet cleaning. Doesn't mean I'm not, but I'm the target demographic. So cost per click would be really a bad idea simply because I'm not shopping and it totally misses the brand value. If I'm searching for a TaylorMade driver, I'm not looking for the brand value of the reseller. I'm looking for a price or something, right? So it's just a very different purpose for cost per click. There's also an issue of critical mass that they're serving billions of ads a day, and so they can manage this and they can create a bidding system and all of these other things. But cost per click is not a good idea for any display advertising in any capacity. And if anyone asks about it, say absolutely not because it's horrible.
Yeah, like Brian said, it's just a different business model. You're not in the CPC business. So if it comes up, you say that's not really what we do, right? It's not a horrible idea if you're on Google, but it's not a good idea for the types of ads you sell. Inventory and unused inventory, you'll hear this from time to time with more sophisticated users. The only reason I really included it in here is because I'll bring it up again when we talk about the sales conversation at the end of the presentation. Think of inventory as the number of ads you could possibly serve in a given month or whatever the time period is, right? So if you have 10,000 page views and you have 9 ads, your inventory is going to be 90,000 ads a month. The same example I gave before. Unused inventory are the ones that are available to sell, all right? So just keep that in the back of your mind. We'll come back to that in a few slides. It's not super important, but when you're coming up with creating your rate card, this will be an important part that we'll cover in a few minutes.
And, the other piece of this is you might hear some advertisers, especially larger advertisers, ask about remnant. That's simply unsold ads that are being liquidated. So there's a lot of remnant on the internet. There's a lot of ways to purchase remnant. You're not a remnant seller. At least you don't want to be because it's sold at a vast discount. So as we roll in and we look at email now, so we've covered web, we've covered Google, now we're going to talk about email. Yes, you should have all of these working in conjunction. You're going to have some subscriber base. And we're going to talk about how you grow your subscribers, but you have some subscribers. And if you send a message to them, hopefully it's a good message and it's targeted to the right people. Don't send your advertise with us message to your readers because while some of those readers are advertisers, many are not. The opens are literally the number of people who click on the email and read it, or at least pretend to read it. So as you look at your open rate, in MailChimp, you're going to see industry averages. It usually is in the 15-ish% range. It varies a little bit by industry, but if you're above that, that's good. If you're at or around 50%, you're amazingly outperforming. But open rate is a good indication of, one, how engaged your audience is, and two, how well you write subject lines. So that's an important thing. And you'll see the correlation of number of opens. This is just math. So opens is 253 times this thing was opened, divided by 1,148 subscribers, and you get your open rate with the percentage. Click and click-through rates. This is, okay, I'm looking at your email. I'm scrolling through, and I click on something. Now, I just got an email today from a publisher that we don't work with, and the email was bad. It was bad. There were images, but when you clicked on them, what did it show me? A bigger version of the image. Didn't link out to their website. And they had their digital edition, but guess where that linked to? The service provider for the digital edition didn't link to their website. And they were talking about how they have new digital advertising opportunities. Did they link any of those? Calls to action, anything? Nope, no links. So even if I tried to click, which I did, there was nothing there to click to. So you want to be thoughtful on how you're structuring your content. Link images and keywords and calls to action to something that you want people to click on, and then they'll click on it and they'll get something useful. But the number of clicks is simply the number of times. So I might look at one email and I click on 3 things. That's 3 separate clicks. That's a good thing. click-through rate is the number of clicks divided by the number of subscribers. So, rates are going to vary wildly. With content, ideally the rate would creep up. With a marketing, it might not be as high, but obviously if you're trying to sell someone something, you don't need a lot of conversion or a lot of clicks to convert well. And then over time, you're going to start building up things like a list average and how it compares to the industry. So,
yeah, I'll just jump in here and reiterate what Ryan said before. 15 to 20%, you're doing pretty good. You can see here the industry average for media and publishing is 21.5%. This list average, this specific email that I grabbed a screenshot from, underperformed what the normal list does. But you're going to see some fluctuation from email to email. Sometimes it's the subject line, sometimes it's the content, sometimes it's the time of day you send it or the time of year. If you're sending out an email about shopping deals during the Christmas season, you're probably going to get a lot more engagement than, say, sending out that same email Christmas morning. You missed the mark there. So you're going to see some variation. MailChimp is a great tool for seeing how you're doing against industry averages. It's our recommended email platform. Again, we don't get paid to say that. We just really like it. So if you're not using it, definitely try to check it out.
And I will say, one of the things we'll regularly do is run what's called an A/B campaign. This is off subject, but related. Basically, what you do is you can create two different titles for a given email and send it to a portion of your list, say 20%. And whichever gets the most opens or click-through, you get to choose, frankly, it will then use that as the subject for the next 80%. So you can use this to test different concepts and different types of titles and so forth. So this doesn't require really advanced analytics. Just simply come up with two different ideas. One may be more dramatic and one's more general. One's more consistent and one's more unusual, whatever. And you can start to see what people respond to more effectively. So, lots of questions. How am I doing? Is this good? Is this bad? I see the numbers. I see the percentage, but I don't know what that means. Well, it's going to be different for everyone based on your geography, based on the type of publication you are, based on your size, how long you've been doing this, how well you do Facebook and email in conjunction with each other. We often set for publishers that we work with, small publications, a target of 10 to 15,000 page views as a good initial benchmark. This is not blowing the roof off of it. This is not dominating your local market, but this is getting to a level of consistent engagement that you can build on and, frankly, that you can monetize at the beginning. In fact, if you watch our pricing and packages video, we assume 10,000 page views a month in that little example. We recommend that you pay attention. If you're posting and your traffic's not growing, there's probably a lesson to be learned there. Perhaps it's about how you're posting, perhaps it's about how you're promoting, or perhaps it's the type of content. So play with different things. Don't view this as a static endeavor. And the reality here is, if you're a print publisher, this is a great indication of perhaps what you should be doing in print as well. In fact, grab your most popular stuff and use it in your next print issue. Here are the 3 most popular posts or Facebook questions or whatever from the last 2 months. That's pretty interesting stuff. It's a snippet. It fills up pages. And, oh, by the way, it signals your website and Facebook page are alive and a part of your brand. So it has a lot of benefits there and helps you get smarter.
Yeah, I really want to stress this measure, improve, and repeat, right? So let's just say you're just getting started or you haven't put a lot of effort into your digital and that's going to change or you want it to change. Go in and get an initial benchmark. Let's just say you're at 2,000 page views a month, okay? Put together a plan to increase that. That's, what kind of content are you going to post? How are you going to promote that on Facebook and email? All the things that we've talked about in past office hours, and then come back in 30 days and say, how did I do? Right? If you really want to know, are you doing a good job? Then every time you come back, every 30 days, that number should be improving. Right? Now you're going to have some down months here and there. The seasons are, the different seasons are cyclical depending on what market you're in. So don't be scared if you go from 2,000 to 5,000 and then down to 3 and then up to 7. That's going to happen. It's a natural equality to it. But you should be looking at the numbers every month, trying to improve them, and then repeating that process over and over. So if you want a true test of how good a job you're doing, that is the test. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. Right? We can give you some initial goals to shoot for, but like we said, starting off this slide, every market is going to be different. You're going to have your unique challenges. Other things that would be hard for one person might be really easy for you. And this notion of testing things and improving them and then repeating that process is how you hone in on what works for you.
And I think this is a pretty insightful piece. If you don't know how you're doing, your advertisers don't know if your numbers are good either. It's one of the big reasons we say, don't sell using stats. One, it's boring, but two, it's not relevant. If you're doing things the way that Locable teaches and that others have been doing, you've got a game plan. A game plan people can understand around the types of content engagement you're driving. And when people buy an ad with you, they're not just buying today, but they're buying that game plan. Particularly true of site sponsors more than any other, but everywhere, frankly. And the other thing is, all the stats people ever hear are Facebook growth, or that WhatsApp was sold for $19 billion, or whatever. There's these massive numbers. And no matter how successful you are, you're going to look like a pipsqueak by comparison, because you're local and Facebook is global. And so the statistics that people are used to are massive. But it's also important to note, if you're trying to monetize your entire web presence and you'd be thrilled with, say, $5,000 a month, that's relevant to being smaller. How much money does Facebook make? Billions of dollars a quarter, right? So the pricing, while not CPM driven, is CPM related, so that whatever your pricing is related to your audience. I'm going to say it again. Whatever your current pricing is, it's related to your audience. So even if you're small, the price reflects that. You're not going to charge people a ton of money for a little value. So don't be ashamed of saying, hey, you know what, we're pretty small, but our prices are modest and that there's value here. And people go, well, is it even worth my time or whatever? Then you can have the audience extension option, which again, we're not going to get into here, but it's where you can place ads on other sites. And you can have that scale built in while still having the high value core of your publication. So think about these core concepts around, am I providing value? If you're creating articles that drive engagement and traffic, that engagement is valuable, especially to small advertisers who just don't have that many options with reaching your audience. Are there places with Facebook or email that you're not really taking advantage of? Are you auto-posting to Facebook instead of using it as an engagement tool? What can you do better there? A big one we see is people not cross-linking enough of their content, creating these dead ends. Not only does it limit your page views and thus ad impressions, but it limits the value your reader gets from your site. So they're less likely to share and less likely to return unless they've got another good reason, instead of saying, oh, I like this site, I'll come back on my own. Do you do things like highlight local events and highlight local posts that might be related to businesses or advertisers? This is content. It's not a banner ad, but it's content, and it's valuable, and it creates sort of affinity within the brand and within your market. And are you doing things around community relations? Are you reaching out to the community to see, well, what are the stories here, and telling local stories so that those people who you feature tell their friends, and if they're a business owner, they go, you know what, maybe I should be involved with this. They cover stuff that I care about, that my customers care about, so maybe I should spend some money here. And then are you educating advertisers? Your job as a publisher, in part, is to be a marketing consultant. If you're not, you're just a salesperson. And there's lots of salespeople. But if you're a marketing consultant, you can add a lot of value. And I can tell you, local businesses are lost in the woods, so you can really help people out in some great ways. So the phrases that we use in print and online and whatever might be changing, but the goals are get a message in front of people, help them understand who that is, and try to get them to engage. I'm going to have Ryan talk a little bit about what you see here and how a publication he helps market tells their story.
Yeah, so there's just a few pieces of information that you need to gather, and at the end of the day, as Brian said, it's about how many times someone sees something and the impressions, right? So you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have print circulation for these 4 magazines. And then we have the online circulation over the last 30 days. So if those are my numbers, here's what the sales conversation might start out as, right? And again, we caution you about selling only on the numbers. You really got to tell the story, because the numbers alone aren't enough. You got to explain to the prospect that it's about the value you provide and engaging with the audience and staying front and center and all that stuff. But you can start the conversation something like that, like this. Each month, 1,400 unique visitors stop by hereinhanover.com. These unique users look at 4,000 pages on our website each month. And each month we serve 47,000 banner ads, reach 4,800 people on Facebook, and send 1,600 emails on top of the 5,500 people we reach in print. All right, so let me just pause before I go on to this next one, as Brian backtracks on the slides. I just outline, without explicitly saying it so far, I just said, hey, print isn't the only way we can help you reach our audience. I mean, this may be a little bit phooey, I guess, a little bit in the comparison of reaching 5,500 people in print. Isn't the same as having 47,000 banner ad impressions. But your initial gut reaction is like, oh my God, that's a lot of impressions, right? So then you can go on to the next step. I'm kind of setting up the stage here for whoever I'm talking to, and you can say this means our multi-channel campaigns offer excellent exposure as you look to reach new customers in multiple ways on multiple days. And then probably the most important thing here is multiple ways on multiple days, right? If you're a print publisher, even if you're a weekly publisher, which a smaller percentage of the people we work with are, but even if you are weekly, there's still 6 days in between issues that your advertisers would like to reach your audience. This is a way to fill in those gaps. And you can get to the last portion of this and say, we know this because 79% of our visitors are new each month. All right, so there's a couple things here. I add that last piece in. You may not want to. You can kind of decide whether it makes sense for you or not. But that just says, hey, it's not the same audience that's coming back every month. Advertisers want to reach new people. So this stat can be powerful. Even if it's 40%, it's powerful, all right, because it outlines that you're reaching new people all the time. Coming back to something I said earlier, you'll see here that I said 47,000 banner ads. All right, that is the number, that's the inventory I have available. It's not necessarily what I serve on a monthly basis. If you were to go back to my banner ad report, it might only say that I serve 10,000 ads. That's because I have unused inventory. All right. So you want to make sure you're taking what's available, not what you actually delivered for that number in particular. And the last thing I'll say is, feel free to change the language to make it fit, your personality, especially in that fourth paragraph. Feel free to play with it and make it yours. But the idea here is you can address it right off the front. And if they say, like Brian said, even if you have a small number of traffic, even if it's like, hey, we only reach 500 unique visitors every month and it's 3,000 page views, right? It doesn't matter because your pricing is going to reflect that. You're going to then go into telling the story of how you're going to build up traffic, how how you provide value that most advertisers or publishers can't do or don't do. All right, this is just a starting point to the conversation, and it's a great way to just be, hey, here are the numbers that matter. You'll notice here I never talked about click-through rate, never talked about demographics, although there's a link, on the website to have my basic, here's, 60% female, 40% male, here are the age brackets, here's the income. You can have all that stuff for people that want to get down into that level of detail, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, businesses want to know how many people am I reaching, how many times am I going to get in front of them, that's unique visitors, impressions, and how am I going to do it?
And I think what's important here, too, to realize is you have a campaign or a wide range of items that can go into a campaign. And banner ads have a very high correlation between the value and the page views. Clearly, the more people I reach, if you take print, my circulation is 5,000, I can't charge nearly as much as if my circulation is 1 million. There is a direct correlation. But don't overlook the fact that there are things that people will pay you for that don't correlate. A sponsored article, a paid post, whether it's an advertorial or it's the Pumpkin Patch Guide, will be on your site basically forever. And while it won't be on your homepage, it will be accessible forever. And Google will see it forever. And so it's a longer-term investment. Likewise, if you do a featured event, not only will it be featured on your site, and not only will it reside on your site forever, but it will be shared to social media and presumably via email. And so you're capturing these various touch points. And how far does it go on social media? Well, it depends how interesting the event is, right? An interesting event is probably going to get shared more. And so you become a foundational stepping stone for a lot of opportunities. And of course, the bigger your audience, the better, all else being equal, but it's not required. If you're talking about a social promotion, we've had publishers with virtually no Facebook fan base, virtually no traffic, virtually no anything who sold a social promotion, and it was good, and we set it up the right way and marketed it the right way, and it blew up. Why? Because there's things that drive its own value through viral trends, and so you want people to understand what's available and what your philosophies are and why people are engaged with you, and then put together a package that meets their needs. If you have an advertiser who goes, yeah, I've got like a $50 a month budget, and then proceeds to say, so how many hits do you get? Really? Really? Why does it matter? You have $50. How far do you think that's going to go? Now, that's a little condescending, and you don't want to take that tone, but the reality is it doesn't matter, because we're going to spend your $50, and we're going to deliver value on your $50 in some capacity. If someone says, I've got $10,000 to spend a month, what can you do? You go, well, we can put together a package that will tap our audience, which will queue up $500, $800, $1,200 of that. And we can do some other things, some of these marketing services that tie in with audience extension and whatever. So you need to know that not everyone's different, and people just ask questions. How much traffic do you have? How many hits? Because it feels like a smart question, and we all want to ask smart questions. So don't get too enamored with the stats. When Ryan runs a social promotion, because he tends to be the one that runs them, he'll pull together some statistics that come out of a various number of sources, and you'll see something that looks more or less like this. Well, this is a successful one, a particularly successful one. So I'm going to let him walk through what this means. And I want to stress before he digs in, 1,600 entries is phenomenal, but it doesn't matter. Because when someone sponsors a social promotion, it's a branding exercise. They're not paying for entries. Although there is some value there, they're paying to get their name out there. So Ryan's going to walk through what this is and help you understand, frankly, where the value is and why it's so diverse for social promotions.
Yeah, so I can't reiterate enough. Entries really don't matter. I include it in the report solely because that's usually the first question everyone asks. How many entries were there? Right? If it's a lower number, so be it. You say, oh, well, there were 80 entries for the contest. Maybe it was only a weekly, you had 80 entries. And then you quickly transition into, but hey, we got a ton of impressions for you. We had 80,000 impressions. And I usually include the breakdown of where they show that our effort wasn't just on Facebook or just on email or just on, the contest page or the emails sent. It comes from a varying different sources. The things that are actually most interesting to me when I send this report are the number of email opt-ins, right? What would you do if all of a sudden you had 788 new emails that you could send an email offer to, right? I kind of took out the wording here that I would usually include when I send the email after a social promotion, but make sure you send that email list to the client, right, or to the advertiser, and encourage them to send out a thank you. Hey, thank you for entering the contest. Here's a special offer for everyone who entered, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be $10 off your next purchase or get a free cookie with your dinner or whatever it may be. It doesn't really matter. But that is probably one of the most valuable things that they get out of the social promotion that's often just skipped over. I like to include the number of shares because it's a great proxy for engagement, right? Now, when Facebook gives you analytics, they're going to tell you how many times people interacted with a post or whatever, but what they're not going to tell you is how many times friends of those friends interacted with your post. So if I go on Facebook and I'm entering a promotion and I share that to somebody else, the analytics starts to run a little bit dry in terms of how you can kind of track that beyond that point. Their friend comes and looks at it, that's an impression that's kind of untracked. Now, if they ultimately end up entering, then they kind of get back into the funnel and all is good. But 530 shares on a social promotion, and I think this particular one was a monthly or just shy of that. It is really good. It means people really like the prizes. They wanted to share with their friends, and that's valuable to the advertiser. You want to make sure to highlight the fact that there were that many shares and that the engagement on the contest was great. Similar to looking at how many comments or how many likes or how many whatever I had. Right, it's another measure of that. So with social promotions, we had a few people ask, well, what does this really mean? Hopefully, as we've kind of covered each of these things individually, now you have an idea. It's that how many people saw it? How many people took action? How many people were engaged? And in the case of social promotions, you also have the email opt-in, which is important. I'll give you one other example. Brian will click through the slide here for me. Just waiting for the screen to catch up here a little bit. Banner ad reporting, right? In this case, this is a report from the Broad Street ad server, but most ad servers throw this out there. Again, it's views, hovers, clicks, and click-through rate, right? If you wanted to do banner ads, you could generate this report. I included this in here just to kind of wrap up with when you're looking at any kind of web metric, you want to make sure that you're looking at a specific period, and you should be consistent from period to period. So it's typically the last 30 days as what you want to look at, or lifetime value. Those are the two options. If you are looking at banner ads, and this has been a existing advertiser for some time, and they want to compare, say, April to March, you want to make sure the time period in April is the same as the time period in March, right? You don't want to just say, those have different number of days. It's not an even comparison. So you just want to be aware of that. It doesn't pop up very often. But if someone says, oh, well, in March, maybe a better comparison would be March to February, right? Because there's actually a 3-day difference that could be very meaningful. If someone says, hey, March was a much better month, you have to, kind of back them up a little bit and say, well, it's not. You're not comparing apples to apples here. It's apples to oranges. So that was just my last little caveat when looking at any analytics. Just make sure you're aware of the base time period and that you're comparing, apples to apples in whatever you're looking at.
Great. So hopefully you enjoyed, or at least got through some of the web stats. Make it actionable. If the information is not actionable for you or your advertiser, it's probably not very useful to you and spend time on. So if we can be of service, let us know, and we look forward to continuing our review and introduction of concepts next week.